I think he should introduce himself.
My name's Dominic Raab, and I'm a Tory. I don't support the Human Rights Act, and I don't believe in economic and social rights.
Yeah, down with economic and social rights. If you didn't have any economic and social rights, what would happen to disabled and sick people?
With the work capability assessment, Napier University and Heriot Watt just released evidence about how it causes almost universal permanent mental health damage. Yeah. It kills people. I have friends who were institutionalized after going through it. It is an act of violence. Okay. And we are dying. And this election is life or death for us.
The raw truth is, the money's got to come from somewhere, and it's very easy.
Let him respond.
It's very easy, and I can think of lots of things that I would like to avoid making difficult decisions on, and lots of areas like the health service or schools where I want to put even more money in. But unless you've got a strong economy, creating the revenue, it's just a childish wish list. We're trying to do our best to get the balance right between responsible public finances and investing in some of those crucial areas you discussed.
You choose to sacrifice tens of thousands of disabled people for the sake of that.
Well, I've heard the persecution of disabled and sick people called many, many things. And I've heard calls for it to be stopped and properly funded, called many things as well. But I've never heard it called a childish wish list before. Crikey. Of course, you don't have to be disabled or sick to suffer from austerity.
The typical user of food bank is not someone that's languishing in poverty, it's someone who has a cash flow problem episodically. No, it's true. That is what the Trussell Trust data says.
It's not what they say, Dominic.
It is.
He was lying when he said that claim had come from the Trussell Trust. The Trust said that while delays to benefit payments were one of the main reasons people turned to food banks, such crises tended to be exacerbated by poverty and low pay, which were also direct causes for many to seek assistance. This came after research was published showing that there are at least 2,000 food banks in the UK. Been a bit unfair to Dominic Raab, because he does actually understand some stuff. You know, all the people saying that we'll easily be able to leave the European Union and have no checks at all on the Irish border. Yeah, that stuff.
We've got a bilateral relationship with Ireland. We're a very close relationship. We've also got the history of the Troubles. All of these things can be handled very sensitively. But I think
if not, if Ireland obviously remains an EU member, then EU nationals can travel there and then come into the UK without a passport.
If you're worried about border controls and security, and Frontex are, if you're worried about the effect of those EU rules, you couldn't leave a back door without some kind either of checks there with any country or assurances in relation to the checks that they're conducting, obviously. Otherwise, everyone with ill will towards this country would go around that route.
But hang on a minute. How could anybody campaign for Brexit, simultaneously acknowledge that we need checks at the British border in Ireland, and also understand the objectives of the Good Friday Agreement? It's almost as if he'd never read the Good Friday Agreement. Presumably he had done so before he actually started pontificating as Secretary of State for leaving the European Union. Presumably.
Could I just ask you, since you had such a critical role as the Brexit Secretary, I presume that in fact you had read the Belfast Agreement. Please don't line up behind the Immigration Minister and tell us that you haven't read the agreement.
I haven't sit down and started at the beginning and gone through it, but of course at various points in the negotiations, when issues have been raised, it has been an important opportunity to delve in to the different aspects very carefully.
So which aspects of so you haven't read the Belfast Agreement in its entirety?
I haven't sat down and gone from, I've used it as a reference tool.
Gosh. So, no social and economic rights. Looking after disabled and sick people is a childish wish list. People using food banks have got cash flow problems. You would need checks at the Irish border, but we should leave the European Union anyway, which suggests you haven't read the Good Friday Agreement. By the time you become Secretary of State for leaving the European Union, you're pushed into a corner where you have to admit that you hadn't, and I quote, properly, even though the words sound wrong, you've never sit down and gone through it. Crikey. Any sort of positives?
we agree to free movement of peoples?
It depends what you mean by full access to the single market. I think we would not see any trade barriers go up because we're the 5th biggest economy in the world. The European firms sell us £68 billion more in goods and services than we do them. Look at the options being put out there. Swiss, Norwegian, Turkish. I think because Britain's economy is bigger than all of those economies combined, and because the French farmers, German car manufacturers sell us £68 billion more each year than we sell them, we're very well placed, and mutual self-interest suggests we'd cut a very good deal, and it's certainly not in the Europeans' interest to erect trade barriers.
Wow. I mean, seriously now, is it possible that he could be more wrong about everything? Even if he woke up every morning and said, today I am determined to be the most wrong person in Wrongland, Dominic Raab, just being Dominic Raab, would manage to be even more wrong. Presumably he accepted at the time questions and criticisms of his analysis, given that we now know his analysis was completely ridiculous.
I think there is a lot of project fear coming out, almost like a scare story every day. The CBI have said we'd have a high-level, ambitious free trade deal, and even the Prime Minister has said it would be scaremongering to suggest otherwise.
CBI and indeed the TUC today, of course, have described in apocalyptic terms the no deal that Raab, for reasons I'm yet to fully understand, has suddenly found himself in favour of. I'm not the only one that doesn't understand things.
We want a bespoke arrangement on goods which recognises the peculiar, frankly, geographic economic entity that is the United Kingdom. We are, and I hadn't quite understood the full extent of this, but if you look at the UK and you look at how we trade in goods, we're particularly reliant on the Dover-Calais crossing.
Well, who'd have thought it, eh? And I guess in his defence, as he said on Ian Dale's programme the other night, he is the kind of person that really speaks up for ordinary working people, except when he authored a book in 2012 which described British workers as among the worst idlers in the world.